The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Mason Beckman and Tristan Warner. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Welcome in, wrestling fans. You are now dialed into the PA Power College Podcast. And as Jason Bryant of the Matt Talk Podcast Network said, I'm Tristan Warner, joined as always by my main man, Mason Beckman, a.k.a. Beck Diggity. Mason, this is episode 28 of the PA Power College Podcast. We are now in the season, in the postseason, and in the month of March. Sorry, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, man, it's exciting. This is the time of the season, right? It's what we've all been waiting for, and I'm just excited that it's here. The saying that we always had in the Lehigh program was that our eyes were on March all year round. No matter what training phase, no matter what we were doing, everything was geared towards March. So here it is, eyes are up, March is here. So I'm excited, man. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's like we've talked about time and time again on our podcast. Really, the couple words that say it all are 3 days in March. That really is what summarizes a whole wrestling career. It's different than other sports where, I guess your legacy is kind of defined. In other sports, your legacy can kind of be defined by a more comprehensive look of your whole season or your whole career. But in wrestling, it's like everyone has a clean slate. Once you get to the NCAA tournament, it's those 3 days in March, really those 2 days to get on the podium. So, who shows up at the tournament, that's who's decided that they will forever be remembered as an All-American.
Right. So case in point on both sides of that. On one end of the spectrum, you have Jay Jaggers, who people remember as one of the all-time greats at Ohio State. He won 2 national titles, was awesome, right? But what people don't know about Jay Jaggers is, and now I've never fact-checked the statistic, but it's not super in-depth, but just from what I've seen, it holds true.
2 tournament victories.
Yep, only won 2 tournaments, and they were the national tournament. So you have Jaggers on one end, who's remembered the way that he is, right? On the other end of that spectrum, take somebody like, I don't know, say Nick Marable, who was good, who was very good, was a couple-time All-American, but was a guy that every year would have a super high seed, super high expectations, and never quite at the tournament wrestled to those.
Yeah, the first person that jumped in my mind, even though he still had a stellar career, third, second, I believe, Sam Hazewinkle from Oklahoma, 25-pounder.
Yes, that's a very good example.
Like I said, he had an amazing career, not knocking it in any way, but just a guy that you thought would have, won a national title multiple times, or at least was a top seed, or was a guy that was favorited to win the weight, and just always seemed to, it wasn't even really a knock at his wrestling, really just somebody came out of nowhere, Paul Donahoe being the number one example I can think of in my mind, in an overtime takedown when he had lost to him several times that year. But there's a guy who went 3-3-3-2, but had beaten pretty much most of those guys, I think, that ended up beating him at the NCAA tournament previously. So yeah, right. There's an example of that.
Or even if you take it another step down, if you look at a kid like Anthony Zanetta, had an awesome career, was in the round of 12 twice, I believe, and could very easily have been a 2-time All-American, and how he's remembered vastly changes. You know what I mean? So
that's right. You get on that podium, you're forever cemented as an All-American, but if you don't, you kind of just slip into the realm of you were a decent wrestler, but you don't really have that signature stat to put next to your name.
Right. So it's exciting that we're at that time again, and you get to see guys chase dreams. But before we really get into things, there is one sidebar I want to go on, because this bugs me, and I just want to put this out there. The way the postseason works, so this weekend is the junior high state tournament for PJWs. Next weekend is PIAAs, then NCAAs, right? The week after the NCAA tournament is youth states. That is the most illogical thing. Maybe not the most illogical thing, but that's just downright dumb. It should go every weekend should move up an age group. So if we're doing this the way in my head this should work, youth states should have been last weekend, then junior high, then high school, then NCAAs. Why would you not end folk style season, or at least the folk style postseason, with the mecca of folk style wrestling? And by doing this, you force families and you force kids. So, I never got to go to NCAAs until I competed there as a true freshman, because we always had areas or PJWs that weekend. Or in high school, I think it was usually areas, because in high school, I was an Area 6 kid, and Area 6 always did a thing that if you were an Area 6 alum or whatever and you medaled at high school states, they would bring you back and you get recognized before the finals. So all 4 years in high school, I had to come back and do that. So I never got to do NCAAs, and it was all because areas and PJWs were those weekends. It's stupid. Why do we make the youth wrestling season longer than the college one? And to anybody that says, oh, youth kids don't have to start till this date or whatever, we all know that youth kids start practicing in October, November. So, please don't try to kid me with that. I coach at that level. I know when programs start. Let's just be realistic. So I just think it's idiotic that we have the youth states as the last event, and that we make young kids wrestle longer because they burn out.
Yeah, I will say at least, me and you, we talked about this, had kind of the opposite experience. Me and my brother TC, we never ever competed in PJWs, never even attempted it, because we always did go to NCAAs as kids just to go watch. So, I don't think I was good enough as a kid to even qualify anyway. TC definitely was. He would often beat kids that were PJW placers and champs, but neither one of us ever even attempted to do the thing because, like you said, the state championship was always on the same weekend as NCAAs, which were halfway across the country, so there was no way, you're going to be able to attend both. But I guess at least this year it seems like, I don't know how all the qualifiers work, but it does look like you said, it's a week later, so I guess that's a step up in my mind than being on the exact same day. At least those youth kids can follow the NCAA tournament, which, in my opinion, I think I gained more valuable wrestling knowledge and experience watching some of the best guys in the country in the college level compete than I did probably ever going to a tournament myself.
Right. Yeah, it's just silly to me. And I think this is a good example of we hurt ourselves as a sport. Why wouldn't you want young kids to be able to look at Jason Nolf and Zane Rutherford and Darian Cruz and Spencer Lee and Mark Hall and Bo Nickel and all these guys? Why wouldn't you want them to be able to look at those guys as their heroes and go watch them? And go watch them win national titles. Go watch them be All-American. I just think, and obviously NCAA's, it's not difficult for the NCAA to sell the event out, right? Anybody that's trying to get tickets this year has dealt with that issue. But I just think we hurt ourselves as a sport. We talk all the time about how can we grow the sport, and then we do things like this. We make fans choose, okay, do I want to go with my younger son to PJWs? Do I want to go with my older one to high school states? Or, NCAAs, and, like your situation, it sucks that you guys had to make the decision to go to NCAAs or to go to your qualifier. I just think it's a really silly thing that exists in our sport, and I just wish the powers that be, and who knows, maybe we need to petition it or whatever, but I just wish we could get a move to the beginning of February, because the youth season should be short. It should definitely be the shortest. And we should enable these younger kids to be able to go to the tournaments of the age groups above them, to be able to be fans of it, to be able to see the next levels, the higher levels, and to give them that image in their head that they can aspire to. So
I agree. I was gonna say, if you bump it up in in March, I mean, then you're competing with high school states. Then the week before that, you're competing with regionals. So yeah, like you said, I think February is the best bet because, like you said, the season should be short. It should be more focused on fun. It shouldn't be a long, grueling season for 7-year-old kids. You know what I mean? So I agree with you there.
Yeah, it's a frustrating situation, and our sport is slow to change things. But anyway, not to spend too much time on non-college wrestling things. So, number one, this is not a drill. I don't think it's a drill anyway. Jason Nolf, according to Cale Sanderson, is wrestling this weekend. So that's pretty awesome for a lot of reasons. As a fan, selfishly, it's awesome because he's super fun to watch. It's also awesome because that means Nolf is healthy and ready to go, which above all else is the most important thing, that, Jason is ready to rock and roll. You never want to see somebody burn a year because of an injury. So that's awesome.
So this is different than the whole Suriano situation last year where he entered at the Big Tens, but then just kind of stepped down on the mat and forfeit and injury defaulted at the 1 second mark or whatever. We're actually expecting to see Nolf compete, right?
I mean, I think so. I definitely think so. But yeah, I don't know. From everything that I've heard, it's been really tight-lipped, but all the whispers around, kind of the Penn State camp and everything, it's kind of seemed like this was the case, that Nolf was he was very far ahead of where Suriano was a year ago. I guess we'll find out on Saturday. Well, that's when the rubber meets the road, right? So, hard to say, but I hope it's true, just being totally selfish as a fan. But hey, that's the beauty of being a fan. We can be selfish, right?
That's right, especially now that we're on the media side of things.
Yeah, very true. Anyway, another tidbit here. Brian Pearsall promoted to the head assistant at the University of Pennsylvania. Awesome for Coach Pearsall. Congratulations to him. Very well deserved. A guy that is clearly one of the best young coaches probably in college wrestling, just from the way that, Roger Reyna's one of the most credentialed head coaches in college wrestling right now, when you really talk about his entire career. And the way that he speaks about Coach Pearsall, the way that Kevin Ward from, Army West Point, who was a guest of ours, a couple months or so back, the way all these guys speak about Brian Pearsall, it obviously, he does a great job. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, I got to be a District 3 native out of Warwick, Pearsall. I got to be on a freestyle, junior duels team with him way back, probably 10 years ago. Super nice kid. One of the most, we had a pretty diverse team out there. We didn't even do that well, I don't think, but he was one of the most well-liked kids on that team for sure. I remember just being out there, being kind of a younger guy, and he was real friendly, real welcoming kid. He wrestled pretty tough, and then, yeah, had a really good career walking on at Penn State and working his way into the starting lineup, had a good career, and then now good to see him doing great things in the coaching world. So good job for Pearsall. Congrats to him.
Right. Awesome. And, hopefully that continues to mean good things for the Penn program. So, all right, moving on. Outstanding wrestlers of this past weekend. Obviously, there were no starters in action, so to speak. So a little bit of a thin field. Well, that's not true. There were starters. Pac-12. I'm sorry. So staying in the Pac-12, going Josh Shields, 2 for 2 and winning the Pac-12. Awesome weekend for him. Another great performance. Put himself in a position to be a top 4 or 5 seed at NCAAs. And depending on, we already touched on Jason Nolf, but if it were to come to fruition that maybe Nolf isn't fully healthy, being on the top side with him might not be the worst draw. If that were to be the case. Again, obviously it's pure speculation at this point, and we'll know a lot more in a few days. But, yeah, he's my OW of the weekend. What do you
got? Brian Courtney and Jake Woodley both, if I'm not mistaken, took titles at the National Collegiate Open. Is that right? As red shirts. Courtney for UVA, Woodley for Oklahoma. So
yes, sir.
2 champs for Pennsylvania there. I think Nino Bonacorsi got second, or maybe third. he had a pretty good performance as well. So pretty good things for some PA boys, some freshmen out there at the National Collegiate Open that happened last weekend. We'll dive deeper into those results here when we get to our weekend results recap. And then I happened to see this on Facebook. Mason, I know you already put it on the outline. You can probably go into deeper detail, but Matt McCutcheon, one of Penn State's many 197-pounders who we had on the show early in the fall, did a pretty good deed this week from what I saw.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So a little kid who out in Iowa who I believe has leukemia, who's a huge Penn State fan, and I don't really know how him and Matt got into contact. I don't know.
I think it said McCutcheon saw a YouTube video.
Is that what it was? Okay.
That's what I read.
So sent, one way or another, Matt heard about this kid's story and that he's a big fan of Matt's as well as Penn State wrestling. So Matt wrote him a full handwritten letter, sent him a bunch of Penn State wrestling gear, and the entire Penn State wrestling team signed the card along with Matt. It's just really cool stuff, man. And it doesn't necessarily take a ton of time, but nobody would ever be any the wiser if he doesn't do that. And, Matt doesn't gain anything out of doing that other than just doing some good for somebody else, right? So that's awesome. So Matt McCutcheon wins Outstanding Human Being of the Week.
Yep, classy move by the whole team, and especially McCutcheon for spearheading that. Good for him.
Right. So what do we got here? Challenge bricks. Mine is at the Pac-12 in general. I posed this question: why do you insist on having your conference tournament a week early? Why you gotta be different? I don't get it. I also don't understand why you would want your guys to have 2 weeks off before NCAAs. That just feels like a lot, like a big lull before the biggest weekend of the year. Seems odd to me, but
yeah,
who knows? That's one of those ones. I'm sure there was some logic somewhere along the line that got that to be the case. I don't know what it is. I just think it's kind of weird and mildly annoying.
Yeah, it's probably one of those, this is the way we've always done it type things, so we're not going to change it, whether it's for good, better, or for worse.
Right.
I guess my only challenge brick of the week is hasn't happened yet, but it happens on an annual basis. We're coming up on the postseason conference tournaments this weekend, and just, next week, whenever the NCAA committee meets, the at-large bids will be selected, 4 per weight class. And I just think every year after year, you'll see some really good kids. I mean, granted, if they don't show up at the conference tournament and don't qualify themselves, then obviously they're putting the decision in somebody else's hands, which is never a good situation. But I just see year after year so many good kids get left at home for the NCAA tournament, and I just think that sometimes the decisions are so inconsistent, number one, and number two, just seem to be a little bit political, and you'll just see kids get picked over other kids that just don't really make any sense to me, just kind of head-scratching situations. So I'm just throwing a challenge brick early. Hopefully we don't see a lot of it this year, but every year I see some pretty suspect at-large bids selected.
Well, if we're throwing preemptive challenge bricks, I'm going to throw them at the seeding committee because we already know there's going to be cattywampus seeds.
That's even worse.
So, weekend results, Pac-12 tournament, really, obviously the only conference tournament going on. Arizona State wins 6 of the 10 weights, 133, Ollie Nazer, I think it's pronounced, 149, Jason Surtis, 157, the man, the myth, the legend, Josh Shields, 65 and 74, the Valencia brothers, and 184 was Cordell Norfleet. Other champs include Ronnie Bresser from Oregon State at 125. He won in a pretty exciting match with Ryan Milhoff in the finals. That, to me, was kind of the premier matchup of Pac-12s. It was a match that in the duel, Milhoff won with a late reversal and backs. So those two guys, both top 10 guys, I think top 10. Regardless, Milhoff's a returning All-American, so both top flight guys. Colton Schilling from Cal Poly wins at 141. Corey Grigo from Oregon State wins at 197. Amar Desi from Oregon State wins at heavyweight. Amar Desi, the Canadian wonder, if you will.
Yeah, and interesting that Tanner Hall, returning, third place finisher at NCAAs, lost in the semis, didn't he? Got third, I think.
Yeah, he lost to Nathan Butler, I think in a ride out, the Stanford guy. The Pac-12 could very easily have 3 heavyweight All-Americans.
Yeah, definitely.
The only other results were the NCO, the National Collegiate Open, which is kind of the national tournament for red shirts and non-starters. You got Brian Courtney, Athens area native, couple-time state champ. He's at UVA. He wins at 141. Jake Woodley, North Allegheny native, state champ. He wins at 197 for Oklahoma. Nino Bonacorsi was a runner-up at 184. And Jimmy Saylor, Easton native, runner-up at 157. Bonacorsi is a Bethel Park native, so he competes for Pitt. Jimmy Saylor competes for Army West Point. So all four of those guys, 4 finalists out of 20. Pretty solid showing for Pennsylvania guys down there. I didn't dive crazy deep into other medalists. It's a little bit hard to track results from opens and things like that without all these guys being attached and whatnot. So, take that for what it's worth. But outstanding job by all 4 of those guys, and I'm sure that all 4 of them will be names that we'll be talking about pretty regularly in the years to come.
Agreed with that. Let's jump into our listener questions segment. We got a couple here, and I feel like they keep coming, Mason. We just got tagged in another one about an hour ago, I think. But let's start with, let's see. This question's from Real Avery Lynch on Twitter. He's hit us with a couple good ones, so shout out to him for being a loyal listener. He's got, what non-Big Ten conference bracket are you most excited to watch?
EIWA 133. Is
that the Scotty Parker?
That's Parker DeSanto Terrell.
Yep, that's a good one.
So I'd say that one.
I had a good one highlighted here.
Big 12 141 will be a good one just because of Heil and Meredith.
And Albert is in there too. Ian Parker's tough too. I had Big 12 125 circled too, just because Piccinini, you got Zeke, Moisey, you got Taylor Lamont, who started off really strong in the beginning of the year, Jay Schwarm from Northern Iowa, and Christian Moody from Oklahoma. So that's, as far as the Big 12 goes, at least, that's a pretty tough weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, what else? I had another one somewhere. 57 is kind of interesting in the ACC. Not necessarily, Hidley's probably going to run away with the title, but the guys fighting for the rest of the spots, you got Fine-Silver from Duke, Kennedy Monday, who's a stud as a freshman. You got Taylor Bermani, who was, 1 or 2 matches away from All-American last year, who's I think like a 5th seed or a 4th seed. And then you got Solomon Shishko, who's obviously a 2-time All-American, who's now up a weight, hasn't been having the best year. He's not in the lineup anymore.
No, BC LaPrade beat him out, according to what I was told.
Okay,
so that's even crazier.
Throws a wrench in that one, but still, there's some big names in that bracket.
Right. Yeah, and not to rain on the parade. Sorry about that, but
yeah, and 133 in the ACC is tough too, with Jack Mueller, Dom Fories, Tariq Wilson, and Dennis Gustafson. And I think
did you see Mueller's the 4 seed?
I was just gonna say, and I'm pretty sure Mueller got the 4th seed because I think he got beat by Tariq Wilson, didn't he? That's probably why. The conference seeding seemed to go heavily based on head-to-head, so.
Well, which makes sense. It's based on your conference record. And Fories beat Tariq and Gustafson. Mueller lost to Tariq. Now, what's interesting, I wonder if Tariq's the 2 or 3.
Gustafson's a 2.
Okay, so Gus must have beat Tariq.
Or didn't wrestle him, because I don't know that Tariq Wilson was in the starting lineup all year for NC State at 33. I want to say they started with one of those twins earlier in the year. I could be wrong.
The Morrises?
I could be wrong, but that's what I thought. But anyway, we'll get deeper into our ACC preview whenever we preview all the conference tournaments here. Mason, let's go to your listener question that you posed for yourself.
My listener question to myself, right? Because I knew that if I didn't put this here, I would forget about it. Where do you consider, so a guy like Mark Hall, a guy like Freddie Stroker's a little bit harder because he moved around a lot, although so did Mark Hall. Where do you consider a guy like that to be from? So Mark Hall is a Michigan native. I think everybody knows that. He was born and raised in Michigan, up there in Davison. Goes to 7th grade round 1 in Kentucky. Then he spent 7th grade round 2 through graduating high school up at Apple Valley, Minnesota, which is a public school that doesn't have open enrollment. So they had an address in Apple Valley. So he lived in Apple Valley in one form or another, lived in Apple Valley for 6 years, competed junior high and high school there. So Mark Hall's national title last year, right?
I would say it has to go to Minnesota.
Right. Because here's my thing. And I have no
stake in this
argument about the fact that he's a Michigan native and all of that stuff, but he spent the last 6 years of his career in Minnesota. So when we're breaking down, and this is all semantics, right? It doesn't actually matter, but you spent the last 6 years of your wrestling career in Minnesota. I don't understand. Again, at a public school that doesn't have open enrollment. Thomas Gilman's a different situation. Lived in Iowa, went to a Catholic school right across the border in Nebraska. Different kind of thing, right? Like when he went to Fargo, he went for Iowa because of his Iowa address. There was another one. Oh, so if you're gonna attribute Mark Hall to Minnesota or to Michigan, that means we got to attribute David Taylor to Wyoming.
Wyoming, yeah.
That is my point. If we're gonna level this across the board, because Taylor moved, I think, in junior high to Graham. If that is the case, then you got to attribute David Taylor to Wyoming, which nobody does.
That example pretty much illustrates what the answer should be. Minnesota,
right? Which nobody does. And look, where the family lives now, quite frankly, it doesn't matter. It's not about that. The kid lived, trained, went to school in Minnesota. His listed address was Minnesota for 6 years. So, yeah, that was kind of my point. That came up in a Twitter conversation with Willie. He attributed him to Michigan, and that was my point, especially when you think about the fact that your 7th through 12th grade years, think about how much development goes on in that time. You know what I mean? Like, you really grow into the guy you're going to be stepping into the college room in those years. And that happened for Mark. Now, he bounced around all over. He went with the OTC and whatnot, and I'm sure he went back to Michigan to train. But at the end of the day, the majority of that happened in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right.
Last listener question came from Ron Crossface Frazier. Thank him for shouting this one out. He says, this time of year, the PA All-American count always gets a lot of attention, but what about the number of PA natives serving as head coaches for D1 programs? So this is a good topic to bring up, I guess. Mason, I guess basically, which D1 coaches right now jump out to you that are PA natives? I thought off the top of my head when I saw this question, I thought Scott Moore's doing big things at Lock Haven. They're having a great year. I thought Keith Gavin's doing a pretty good job turning around Pitt, even though they didn't have a great dual year. I think they have good individuals, a couple that could make a good run at NCAAs. I also thought of Matt Storniolo at Northwestern, between Sebastian Rivera, Ryan Deacon, Johnny Sebastian's moving into the top 20, Mitch Sliga, Conan Jennings was in the blood round last year at heavyweight. So, I mean, their 33-pounder, I think is a true freshman, kind of unheralded, was ranked in the top 20 most of the year. I would say those guys jumped out to me.
Run through the list again for me.
Storniolo at Northwestern, Scott Moore at Lock Haven, Keith Gavin at Pitt. Those are guys who immediately jumped out to me as PA natives serving as head coaches.
Well, Santoro, Storniolo, Gavin, Reyna.
Teague Moore's an American.
Teague.
I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of examples. Those were just the ones
Scotty Moore
jumped out to me right away.
Yeah, Scott Moore's one. Rogers, the
Coleman
head at
Scott.
F&M.
How about Coleman
Scott? I'm pretty sure Rogers, the head at F&M, is a Pennsylvania guy. Yeah, this was one. I probably should have done more research on this before we recorded, but there's a lot of them. This is actually a really, really good question. There's a ton of Pennsylvania natives floating around as Division I head coaches, which is pretty cool when you really think about it, because there's not that many jobs for that type of thing.
It makes sense, though, being the best state, you know.
Yeah, I mean, just the network and everything. When you when you consistently produce the most Division I All-Americans every year, it would just stand to reason that it would, kind of continue to translate upward, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there's definitely guys that we're forgetting or that we're missing, but just off the top of my head, and I think it's very cool that many Pennsylvania schools are led by Pennsylvania natives. Oh, Clarion Ferraro, he's a PA guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I would think so.
I'm pretty sure he's a Brookville guy. I know he coached at Brookville, but I'm pretty sure he's a Brookville guy. I could be wrong. I should ask Brock Sackrell about that. Anyway, before we totally derail, let's get into our weekend preview and talk about conference tournaments. So I'll give you the floor. You go ahead and lead with Big Tens.
Okay, there's a lot of conference tournaments coming up this weekend. A lot of weights, a lot of matches to go through. Mason, we probably don't want to roll through every single weight class, at least for all of these, but I guess for each conference, let's just pick a bracket that really stands out. The Big Ten coming up. I mean, we could go on about pretty much all of these brackets. I would say you got to start with 25. You got Nathan Tomasello, Nick Suriano, Spencer Lee, and Sebastian Rivera. Spencer Lee, by the way, coming up here on this show. Very fortunate to be able to grab a hold of Spencer for a brief interview. But that's an absolutely stacked bracket. He seems pretty excited to get scrapping in that one.
Yeah, and I'm excited to watch him. And you know what? If I'm picking Spencer because every time I pick against him, maybe I should pick against him so he keeps winning.
Selfishly, yeah.
Right. Either way, I'm picking Spencer this weekend, and if he gets beat when I pick him, I'm just never gonna pick him again. That seems like the logical thing to do, right?
Sounds about right.
But the kid, his entire life, all he's ever done is win. He's continued bionic knee and all to be awesome this year. Gonna be really interesting to see what form Suriano is in after missing about a month due to sickness. Tomasello, you know what you're getting there. Probably going to see a rematch with him and Spencer in the semis, which would be a ton of fun. Be interesting to see what adjustments NATO has made, as well as what adjustments Spencer will make. Not to mention you've got Sebastian Rivera in there as the 4, so going to have a lot of good matchups in there. And then Lezak, I think, is like the 7, so that's a 7, 6, somewhere in there. But Lezak's a fairly low seed, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out. And maybe Backpack Lezak throws another wrench into things.
Yeah, I mean, this is returning NCAA finalists we're talking about. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, and a kid that can score a lot of points and not a lot of time because of how he is on top.
Yep, that's right. 133, I guess we might as well roll through some of these Big Ten weights since there's so many PA guys. You got Luke Pletcher, who still has, just one loss on the season, I think. He's in a bracket with Stevan Micic from Michigan and Mitch McKee from Minnesota. So really any one of those guys, I guess, could emerge at this weight class. You'd have to think Micic is the favorite right now, but watch out for Luke as those two have split matches this year.
Yeah. Again, if I'm picking, I'm probably going to pick Micic. Just the way he has looked lately. He's looked lights out, man.
Yeah.
And honestly, since Vegas, he's kind of gotten himself back to that kid that we all expected him to be, as far as, the clear number 2 behind Seth Gross. So if I'm picking Micic, but I think Pletcher is absolutely right in that match. I'm going to be interested to see Pletcher and McKee because they're completely contrasting styles. You've got Pletcher, who's not conservative, but everything's very straightforward. Everything's very basic fundamentals. And McKee, who throws 5 kitchen sinks at you a match. So that's going to be an interesting match to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and speaking of the way people have looked lately, I would say few people in the country have looked as good lately as Joey McKenna for Ohio State. He's coming in at 141. You got him and Nick Lee for Penn State leading the way. Mikey Carr, who we interviewed a few weeks ago for Illinois, PA boy. Limix from Purdue, Cole Weaver from Indiana, Chad Redd from Nebraska, and Tommy Thorne from Minnesota. So a pretty deep weight class, but I would say, as you put here on the outline, McKenna and Lee seem to be the surefire pick for the finals.
Right. I don't really know how you can pick against that final with the way that, especially with the way that Joey McKenna has been wrestling lately. We talked about it back to the guy that we saw in Madison Square Garden. So if that's the case, it's a McKenna Lee final. That match, I'm sure, will be huge for the team race. Behind that, you've got Mikey Carr, who was a guest a couple of weeks ago, Nate Lemmix, Cole Weaver, Chad Redd, Tommy Thorne. Going to be a fun way to watch, but I think McKenna Lee is kind of the match that looms.
149, Zane and Sorensen, pretty much
Right,
Zane, and then Sorensen.
And then Sorensen, and then everybody else.
Yeah. 157 is obviously going to be interesting with Nolf coming back. We don't know how healthy he is, what his status is, but all we know is that we always trust Kale. And if he says Nolf's ready to go, then I think Nolf's going to be ready to go. And then you got Mikey Kemmerer, another PA boy wrestling for Iowa, Pantaleo from Michigan, Micah Jordan, and Tyler Berger from Nebraska, among others. So another pretty stacked weight class.
Right. It'll be a fun weight class. And obviously, the Nolf situation with his knee is the biggest question mark and the biggest storyline, probably of Big Ten's as a whole. But if Nolf goes, you got to believe it'll be a Nolf-Kemmerer final. Also, the interesting tied for number one pre-seed was weird between those two. But then you've got the biggest enigma in college wrestling, and Pantaleo's the 3, Micah, Berger. So be a fun weight. 65.
This is my most anticipated conference bracket
for sure.
By far, hands down.
Yes. Did you see that 8 of the top 12 guys, or 6 of the top 8 are in this weight, and I think 8 of the top 12 in the country are in this weight?
Yeah, I was going to say, just listed alone here, you got Aymar, Chenzo, Marinelli, Richie Lewis, Evan Wick, Nick Wanzek, and Logan Massa. And then you don't even have here listed, but Isaiah White for Nebraska and Tashan Campbell for Ohio State both have been in the top 10 this year at some point. So, I mean, that's incredibly deep, incredibly stacked weight class. Aymar undefeated, Marinelli undefeated, Chenzo just that one loss to Marinelli. The rest of these guys, all just a handful of losses. They're all top 10 guys.
Yeah, this weight's going to be outrageous because it's going to be guys will finish. It's very likely that somebody in here will finish lower at the conference tournament than they will at NCAAs.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is just outrageous.
Who you picking for that weight, by the way?
I'll go Aymar. I just kind of have a gut feeling that he's just looked different this year. He's looked like the freshman version of himself that was just chasing something. You know what I mean? And I hope I'm wrong. I really, truly hope I'm wrong and that Chenzo is the guy that comes out. I think Chenzo beats Marinelli, for what that's worth. I think it's a Chenzo-Aymar final. Wouldn't in the least surprise me if they split, meaning, say, Chenzo wins this one, Aymar wins the next one. But, yeah, that's kind of my thought process. Who you got?
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. I'd probably go with Aymar for this one, but like you said, never count out Chenzo at the NCAA tournament or in any kind of big match from what we've seen of him so far.
Yeah, you can't count him out, period, man. He's just really, really good at wrestling, and he's super dangerous. Now, what we have seen lately that's been interesting is that he's gotten himself into trouble, both his last 2 matches, right? Yeah, with Iowa and then with
Buffalo.
Obviously, Marinelli capitalized. Well, both situations his opponent capitalized on, but Marinelli made it stand up, whereas the kid from Buffalo was not successful in making it stand up. So, it'll be interesting to see if Chenzo's a little more cautious. I doubt it, just because he's always been a go for broke guy. But gonna be a fun weight to watch.
Yeah, let's roll through the rest of these weights. 174, obviously Mark Hall, but potential rematch of the NCAA finals with Bo Jordan looming there. You also got I always get their first names mixed up. Is this Miles Amin?
The bigger one is Miles, yeah.
That's right. He was a 4th place finisher last year at NCAAs and owns a win over Bo Jordan this season. So that's a pretty stacked weight class. And then at 184, we got Bo Nickel and Miles Martin, obviously probably the 2 guys on a collision course. And then Abinator from Michigan is in his fifth-year senior campaign, yet to get on the podium, but you'd think he'd be up there this year. And then Emory Parker from Illinois is a top 10 guy too. So both those weights, maybe not super deep, but have some pretty good names up top.
Yeah, the match in this weight to me, I guess there's really two, but you've got Bojo Amin round 3. They've split so far. You got that in the semi on the bottom, which will be a really fun one. I gotta believe Bo wins that one. I just don't see Amin beating him twice in a row. And then you've got Hall Jordan round 4. Yeah, round 4. So gonna be a really fun bracket to watch how the semis and finals play out. I got Marky Mark winning it. He's the consummate winner. There's not much else you can say.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing with Bo Nickel at 84.
Yeah, Nickel over Mymar. I don't think there's much to say there.
97, though, there is some stuff to say. Colin Moore, Ohio State, I guess still ranked number 1 despite 2 recent losses, or at least he's seeded number 1, maybe not ranked number 1.
Right.
Corey Rashid gets the nod. Shakur Rashid, I guess he goes by now, gets the nod for Penn State. Cash Wilkie from Iowa, Hunter Ritter from Wisconsin, Kevin Beasley from Michigan. But really, it's Rashid and Moore on a collision course, probably. We saw Kassar in the dual meet get thrown out there and pull off the monumental upset over Colin Moore. How do you see Rashid matching up with him?
Man, I don't know. So, look, I think Rashid is really, really good, obviously. And, he's not just a cradle guy. Shakur Rashid is very, very good. But it all depends on what version of Colin Moore shows up. And even if the best version of him shows up, Rashid is absolutely in that match. But it's a hard match to predict because Moore's been kind of schizophrenic. I think that for the first time in his life, Moore is the guy with the bullseye on his back because he was never that guy in high school. I think he only won 1 state title, was never that top-tier national guy that got the attention that people talked about, that people really, really wanted to beat. And I completely understand that. I think that might be playing games in his head. So if Colin Moore comes to wrestle, he's going to be a bear to beat. But having said that, so is Rashid. If I'm picking, I'm going to ride the hot hand. I'll go Rashid.
Yeah, honestly, I'm picking Rashid. I don't think he loses another match this year. That's my maybe Pennsylvania biased pick. But he's, like you said, riding the hot hand. That guy looks untouchable right now at 197.
I completely agree. He's looked outstanding. Then heavyweight, it all comes down, I don't care what you say, to Snyder and Kuhn. Who you got?
I got Snyder. All the credit in the world to Kuhn for the last match, but like you said, it's pretty hard to beat the best guy in the world twice in a row. So, I don't see it happening again.
I agree. And you know what? If Kuhn proves us all wrong again, then kudos to him kudos to him regardless. But if he does it again, that'll change a lot of people's opinions about how they're going to see NCAA's working out. Also, it would throw a massive wrench into Ohio State's team hopes. But
yeah, let's for the sake of time, let's roll through the rest of these conference tournaments. We have all these big names at each weight laid out. Mason, let's pick one weight at each tournament just for the sake of time that you're most intrigued to see. Start with the EIWAs, your former conference tournament here.
Yes, sir. The oldest conference in college wrestling. Fun fact, the 114th edition of the EIWA tournament. I'll go 33, like I said before. I think the DeSanto, Parker, Terrell triumvirate's going to be super interesting to see it play out. 3 very different styles. You have DeSanto, who has that crazy high pace, the grip that rips skin off of Coach Azevedo's arm every day at practice. You have Scotty Parker, who's just that fundamental guy. He's got, good single leg, good high crotch, good go behind. He's just tough in all 3 positions. You know what I mean? Nothing flashy, but he's super solid. And then you've got Josh Terrell, who does things that we've only seen the things Josh Terrell does before because his older brother did them. But before David, we'd never really seen the crap that those guys, I don't want to say crap because it's not. They're just, it's all judo based, so it's very, very different. And I wrestled Josh my senior year, and it's a full-blown nightmare. It's not fun. You are completely paranoid for 7 minutes. Going to be a really fun way to watch it play out. If I'm picking, obviously I can't. I'm going to pick Scotty because I can't be objective with these guys.
At least you admit it.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue it.
Hey, the first step is
Scotty.
admitting the problem, so good for you.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
I'm going to go with 197. Ben Darmstadt, ranked 3rd in the country right now as a freshman for Cornell. That kid's on fire. Frank Matisse from Penn, veteran guy who's been around, almost was an All-American last year. You got Jarrett Kasnick from a Benton kid. Is he Benton? I think, yeah. He's wrestling for American.
Russ, huge product.
He's pretty close to top 10. Steven Loizo for Drexel, and then Chris Weiler, who's a really tough redshirt freshman for Lehigh. I'm going to pick Darmstadt, although he does have a loss this year. I think one of his 2 losses is to Frank Matisse. So I think he's just
Matty Ace.
Is it Matty Ace? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Darmstadt's been on fire lately. I think he'll avenge that one and get the dub there. He's a title contender at 197 as a young buck.
Yeah, Darmstadt. Heard a lot of talk about how good the Cornell camp thought he would be. And even knowing how well they produce freshmen, i.e. Yianni Diak-Mahalis, Kyle Dake, Gabe Dean, Max Dean, for that matter, did not expect this type of season out of Darmstadt. He's the number 1 guy in America right now, I think, depending on where you look.
Yeah.
So, all right, ACCs. My pick for this would be, I'm going 57. I think Hidlay, Fine-Silver, Kennedy Monday, Taylor Bramani, BC LaPrade, if it's not Solomon Chisco. Going to be a really fun way to watch it play out. Obviously, I'm picking Hidlay. He's undefeated to this point. You know, going to the national tournament. Put himself in a position to maybe be the 1 seed. You know, if Jason Nolf wins Big Tens, Nolf, as much as it sucks, has a loss on his record, right? So if it comes to be that Hayden wins ACCs, which he's absolutely the odds-on favorite to do, and Nolf wins Big Tens, could see a Hayden Hidlay number 1 seed, which would be interesting.
Yeah, we already talked.
Go ahead.
No, you got it.
I was just going to say, I think they would still go with Nolf based on the fact that
he's a returning national champion also.
Well, yeah, but more than anything, his only loss is a default. That would be my guess anyway. I could be dead wrong. The committee has shown that the one thing they value most is going undefeated. So
yeah, I was going to say Jimmy Sheptock got the 1 seed 1 year for Maryland over Ed Ruth for a similar situation, I think. That was the year Ruth took that 1 loss to Gabe Dean at the scuffle.
Ed was the 3.
Yep, because Dean was 2.
Right. So who you got here at
I was just going to go with 57 and 33 are the most intriguing. We already talked about both of them, but 33, Jack Mueller, Dom Fories, Tariq Wilson, Dennis Gustafson, all tough guys. I see either Mueller or Fories winning it, and I think they're on the same side of the bracket. So whoever wins that semi, I think, goes on and wins the bracket. So, I guess I'll pick Fories, PA boy, but I could easily see Mueller coming out and winning that one too. He's a turning All-American 6th place finisher at 25 last year for UVA. So, let's roll on to the Big 12. We already talked about a couple of these brackets. Mason, which one intrigues you the most?
I'm still going to go 41 just with Meredith Heil, mainly because it all comes down to what are we going to see out of Dean Heil. It's crazy to think that a guy that's a 2-time returning defending national champ, we're using the conference tournament as a measuring stick, but we are, because if he goes out and beats Bryce, and Bryce has been super consistent this year, he's been at that elite number 1, number 2 level all year long. If Dean goes out and beats him, then all of a sudden we're back to square one, and that Dean Hiles is a very clear national title contender. If Bryce beats him, Bryce has still never taken him down, which is a bizarre statistic. But if Bryce goes and beats him, then maybe Heil is on the Derek St. John path, where he'll finish as an All-American, but it'll kind of be it'll be a 5-6 range, never truly contended for that title kind of tournament. So I'm excited to watch how 41 plays out.
Yeah, 141 is obviously a big one. I already talked about 125, so I won't go into that much depth, but Piccinini, Taylor Lamont, Zeke Moisey, Christian Moody, and Jay Schwarm, 5 pretty good names, top 20 guys, and Zeke's always intriguing. He's a polarizing figure, one of my favorite guys in college wrestling. Always talk about him, so I'll leave it at that, but I'd like to see how he does, how he stacks up against those guys. Let's roll on to the MACtion, former conference. My former competing conference here, 140, or I was going to say 141. It's probably my weight. Jaden Ironman for Missouri, a 5th place finisher last year. Mason Smith from Central Michigan, who was one of those guys who was pretty solid last year. I want to say he qualified, but didn't make a whole lot of noise at the national tournament. But this year he's a Midlands champ. I think he's moved all the way up to like the top 10, maybe 10 spot. And then Alex Madrigal for Old Dominion, who's coming up a weight from 133, has had a really good year. I think he was hurt for a little bit, but I think he's healthy now. And him and Mason Smith in the semis could be an intriguing one. Could see him in the finals against Ironman. What do you got here?
41 is definitely one of mine, but I'm going to go 49 with Grant Leith and Justin Oliver. Both of these guys have been ranked in the top 5 for a lot of this season. 49 behind Zane and Sorensen doesn't get basically any attention, and I get it, but Grant Leith is ranked 3rd. Oliver, honestly, I don't know what he's ranked right off the top of my head, but he's been like 4th, 5th for a lot of the year. So this is going to be a super fun match. Both really scrambly guys. Leith, a rubber knee guy that can do things that look like they should rip your knee in half. So going to be a fun one to watch play out at 49.
Yeah, I agree. Let's roll into our last one, or at least the last one we're going to talk about, the EWL. Stack full of Pennsylvania guys. Not a whole lot of weights that have a ton of depth, but just from a clear 1-2 matchup here in the conference, I'm going 165, rematch of Chance Marsteller and Chad Walsh. Chad Walsh, a 2-time All-American now for Ryder in his senior year. Chance, what is he now, a redshirt junior for Lock Haven, only has that one blemish on his record. Came to a red shirt from Northern Iowa in Bryce Steyert at the Scuffle. But Chance, Chad Walsh, could be a doozy.
Yeah, I'm going 65 too. I think that's a no-brainer. Picking Chance with my head and my heart. I also think Chance is a horrible style matchup for Chad.
I agree.
With
so
as positionally sound as he is, and as powerful as Chance is, it's going to be really hard to get into the scramble sequences that Walsh wants to force. So I agree. I think 65 is by far the way to watch. So, all right, that's our weekend preview. You know, right now we mentioned it a little bit already, but we had an awesome conversation with Spencer Lee earlier. So we're going to throw it over to that, hear from him about what he's thinking heading into his first postseason as a collegiate wrestler, and we'll bring it back and wrap it up.
Now is a living Pennsylvania legend. He's a 3-time Pennsylvania state champ, current Iowa Hawkeye, ranked as high as 2nd and 3rd in the country as a true freshman, 3-time world champ, Spencer Lee. Spencer, thanks for coming on the program, man.
Thanks for having me.
So, it's been an interesting year for you, man. Definitely a little bit different, I'm sure, than what you're used to. You know, to go all the way back to last spring, you get your knee operated on, and you go through the entire rehab process, which puts you right into really the start of the season, and then you're kind of in that first semester limbo with your whether or not you're going to redshirt or whether you're going to wrestle and everything. Just talk about what this last year or this last 9 months has been like for you, and you know what the growth process has been like.
I think it was just I think the transition to college was something a little. It was different than what I had expected, to be honest. But it was good. It was good, different. University of Iowa did a good job. And the coaching staff did a good job getting me acclimated to this type of level of wrestling, and partners. I mean, I had great partners, so there's no excuse. as to why I wouldn't be ready to go for college. So I was just preparing myself mentally the whole time during rehab, get ready to go in this room and scrap hard. And obviously my first priority was getting my knee 100%, and then it was getting back on the mat and getting to where I wanted to be and to where the coach and I believed that I was ready to go.
Spencer, you talked a little bit about your training partners. I just wanted to ask, in a couple minutes, if you could just sum it up, what's it like to be an Iowa Hawkeye? I mean, coming from Pennsylvania, you're a legend out there. You come in just from the coaching staff, the culture, the history, the facilities. I mean, the kind of training you guys get there. What's it like, if you could describe it briefly, to be an Iowa Hawkeye?
Well, for me to be an Iowa Hawkeye, it's like being a part of a family. All of us want to see each other succeed, no matter if you're a starter or not. That we don't care. The whole point of this program is to see everyone try and become the best that they can be, whether that is being an NCAA champion or if it is being a backup. I mean, not trying to put anything down on that, but that's what I see University of Iowa as, and that's something that I saw on my recruiting trips and why it was a big reason as to why I came here. The coaching staff, they treat you like you're like their son. You're like I see them as like almost a father figure besides obviously my own father, and they'll literally do anything to help you, like whatever it takes. And I just love that mentality, because it makes all the guys on this team want to run through a wall for our coaches and try and reach our goals. And I believe that I believe that I have the best partners in the world, and I always keep saying that we have the best fans in the world, and it's an entertaining business, and we're doing our best to go out there and entertain fans, and for all the fans out there, whether you are an Iowa Hawkeye fan or not. So I couldn't imagine being in a better place.
So you touched on having some of the best training partners in the world. Thomas Gilman last year, a world silver medalist, and then you were Dan Dennis's training partner in Rio in 2016. What was it like? What did that trip to Rio and getting exposure to the Olympic Games on the inside, as well as training with a world silver medalist every day, what does that kind of stuff do for you?
I think it just shows you what type of level those guys are on and how hard they train. Just experiencing it with them, what they do, what they go through, how they had to train to get to the point to where that kind of shows you where you need to go, like where you need to be, how you need to train to get to where, in their position. Obviously Gilman didn't want to be silver, but he made the World Finals, and that's a goal everyone wants to do, right? You're right there. So I know how they train. I know what it takes essentially to get to that level, and training with them and feeling them and seeing everyone that you wrestle brings a different experience. Dennis and Gilman are very different wrestlers, even though they both come out of this program. Something that the coaching staff always likes to emphasize is that there is no Iowa style. It's your style is Iowa style. So that's what I love about it. They don't change your style. They just whatever you're good at, they help improve what you're good at. And obviously they're going to put their own little take into it, and that's just how it is, and I love it.
Spencer, you've had an incredible true freshman campaign to this point. You're definitely not surprising anybody across the country, especially us back here in Pennsylvania. How would you assess so far your success of the season to this point, and also what are the key focuses, I guess, of your training and looking forward as we approach the Big Tens here and NCAAs? What's really the main focal point of your training to get where you want to be here in about 2 weeks in March?
Just focus on wrestling 7 minutes hard, and if it takes longer than 7 minutes, then however long a match takes, wrestle every position as hard as you can. That's what I'm focusing on.
So, to go back to December, your first real big event as an Iowa Hawkeye, even though you were still in redshirt, was Midlands. And, you drop a tough one to Bresser there and everything. That match, was there anything that you really took away from Midlands that maybe you didn't know going in? And, did that Bresser match change the way that you looked at things? Or, did you learn anything from that Bresser match, again, that you didn't know going in?
I knew exactly why I lost and everything about it. There's no surprise. One, you can't leave it in the ref's hands, and two, you got to score points. I did both of those things. I didn't score points, and I left it in the ref's hands. And every time you do that, it's either going to be a 50-50, and if you don't score points, you're not going to win matches. So there really is no surprise there. It's pretty simple, in my opinion.
So then, not long later after that, obviously, you go into the duel against Ohio State with Tomasello. Just talk about, you personally going into that match. Obviously, you try to approach everyone as the same, but, that's a big match. That's your first chance to compete against a guy that's won a national title, in an Iowa singlet and everything. What did that match mean to you? Was that any different than any normal match? I guess that's my question. Did you treat that any differently? Was Nathan just?
I mean, me and Nathan have known each other for a while, so I mean, it was different since I don't think either of us ever expected to wrestle in a college setting. Since when we would train together, I was in 8th grade, he was a senior in high school. So I think that would be the biggest difference, because I mean, I trained in Ohio when I was younger, and he's obviously from Ohio. And we trained together at OTC one time when I was in 8th grade, in the summer of my 8th grade. And you never really think that you're going to wrestle that guy, Like, I never thought that I would wrestle Tomasello in college. Maybe one day, like Olympic ladder thing, yeah, you can expect that, because it's senior level. It doesn't matter as long as you're older than 18, you can compete in it. And if you're, I figured we'd be the same weight, because I wasn't really going to grow too much more, and I didn't. And I think that's the only difference, really. I mean, I treat it like it was, the biggest match in the world, because it was the next match, and that's how you got to treat every match.
Spencer, you guys are starting kind of a pipeline, it seems like, from Pennsylvania to Iowa, and especially Western Pennsylvania, with you, Michael Kemmerer, Caleb Young, Max Murin now. What's your message to these young Pennsylvania studs coming out of high school to, take a leap of faith and travel halfway across the country to come wrestle for Iowa? Do you have a message for those type guys?
Well, it's just wrestle hard and do your best. Listen to Jody and listen to all your high school coaches, because they have the best interest in you, for you. And, if we're recruiting you, always take advantage of it. Take a visit. And, I would take all your visits. I didn't take all my visits. I committed before my official visits were allowed. And I don't know, hindsight 2020, maybe I should have waited. Maybe, so I would say take all your visits would be my only advice for that kind of thing.
So, knowing you and knowing the career you've had and the expectations you've always publicly had, this probably seems like an obvious question, but, being part of the Iowa program and the Olympic success that those Iowa guys have had, that your coaches have had, was that part of your decision that played into you wanting to be a Hawkeyes, to wrestle for, Tom Brands, who's an Olympic gold medalist, and to be surrounded by that type of people?
Well, I just think it's a good, recruiting them, maybe, that the two coaches were both lightweights, my weight, and they're both Olympic level wrestlers. And I mean, I had a super, super close relationship with Terry, and I don't know, I just couldn't imagine not wrestling for Terry at any program, really. He's the man, and obviously Tom's the man too. I got to know him a lot better in Rio since he was Dennis's coach. But yeah, I mean, they're both lightweight coaches, and I mean, I always say I'm selfish, and I believe this is a place that I can be the best, to develop to be the best I can be. And I believe that those two were the main reason I came here, yeah.
Spencer, we know you got to run to a workout. We appreciate you taking the time. One more question from me. You've obviously wrestled on some pretty huge stages in your life. Being a true freshman, though, this is your first time looking forward to the postseason in college. So you got Big Tens coming up and then NCAAs. Competing in maybe the most stacked weight class, or at least one of the most exciting ones from a viewer standpoint. Simple question, how excited are you for this postseason?
It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun wrestling great opponents who all have the same goal as you. Especially, I've always watched NCAA's Big Tens on TV, and now I'm going to be a part of it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, hey, buddy, awesome stuff. Again, thank you for taking the time. We know things are hectic this time of year, so we really appreciate it. And, you got anything else for us?
Nope. Go Hawks.
All right, thanks, buddy. Good luck.
Yep, thank you. See you.
Good luck, Spencer. Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, and once again, thanks a lot to Spencer Lee for joining us, taking time out of his busy training schedule right now, coming up on the postseason here. We really appreciate him taking the time and talking with us, and obviously one of the best all-time Pennsylvania wrestlers from a high school standpoint, and presumably through his college career, as he's already making a huge splash out there in Iowa. So thanks again to Spencer. Mason, anything else before we wrap it up here?
No, not much. Thanks for following along with us all season. Again, going to be an awesome weekend of wrestling. I'm sure there will be a lot of topics to discuss next week. So if you got any questions, any reactions from the conference tournaments, hit us up with them. We'd love to discuss them. Can't wait to do it.
All right, and like Mason said, that's going to wrap it up for us at the PA Power College Podcast. Thanks again for dialing in, as always. I'm Tristan Warner. Find me on Twitter at WarnTriz, and you can find Mason at Beck_Diggity. Visit PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle and send us a friend request on Facebook. Until next time, stay classy, wrestling fans.